Highly narcissistic clients. This is a video about my experience in working with highly narcissistic clients, how to deal with them, and how you even may be able to help some of them ramp down their narcissistic tendencies to the point where they are more functional. This is Jürgen Rasmussen. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis vlog. So in dealing with people who have a lot of narcissism going on, narcissism, of course, being a personality pattern, a way of operating in the world, the main thing is to understand what it really is about. So if you read up on the topic of narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder, you'll see that narcissism is essentially about the drive to feel special. The drive to feel special, to be exceptional, and to be unique. And when this drive gets really, really strong, so that it's almost like an addiction or a compulsion, and when life revolves around being special and exceptional, that's when it becomes really dysfunctional and seems to lead to a lot of problems. Quite often the problems lead to problems for other people, but sometimes people come to see you because as a result of how they are interacting in the world, they begin to see that their own tendencies of exploitation and entitlement are bringing them trouble. So there's three types of narcissism that seems to be recognized at this stage. The first one is the kind of classic grandiose narcissist, which is kind of the stereotypical one. It's the flashy, bragging, bravado, extroverted, high energy, who demands center stage, who demands validation, who demands recognition, and they can often be quite charismatic. They can often be the life of the party. Here the drive is to be the most accomplished, the most successful, the richest, the most attractive, these sort of things. So this is the kind of narcissist that you would recognize. For example, if you look at, let's say, a person like Donald Trump, for example, or you see that would be like the poster child of this expression of narcissism. And then you have what's often called the covert or vulnerable narcissism. And these people often come off as a bit depressed or sullen or resentful. They're more shy or introverted. But they're still highly narcissistic in the sense that it's about being the biggest victim, the most misunderstood person. There's this sense of entitlement that the world owes me, and if only the world saw my talents, if only the world recognized me. So there's this bitter, sullen resentment kind of victimhood orientation. You'll often see more of these folks in therapy and change work, and they very often kind of present as needy and depressed. But they're still that. So the difference is that with the kind of classic narcissists, the grandiosity is on the outside. They're more extroverted, and the vulnerability is on the inside. With the more covert narcissists, who are often more shy and introverted, The vulnerability is on the outside, but the grandiosity of, I haven't been acknowledged, I haven't been listened to, that hypersensitivity, that whole victimhood orientation, the sullenness, is more on the inside. And then you have what's called the communal narcissists. And here it's still about being special, but it's often about being the most compassionate person, or the most helpful person, the kindest person, the person who saves the world. You know, there's often a lot of hypocrisy and stuff like that. It might be one of those people who fly their private jet, preaching environmentalism and trying to encourage other people to shower less or eat less meat while they jet around the globe. The recent thing in Davos, the World Economic Forum meeting, I think you had 250 private jets, jetting in, and these are the save the world types. If only I could be behind the reins. If only I could rule the world. My benevolent vision of mankind. So these seem to be the type. You can often find a lot of narcissism too in therapeutic communities or spiritual communities. Of course, the most enlightened person, the most awakened person, the compulsion to become enlightened or awakened. You can very often see quite a bit of that sort of stuff. Now, the thing about people who have strong narcissistic traits is that what they're essentially struggling with is an insecure attachment style. Meaning, when they were young, when they were young children, they did not have the experience that they could depend upon their primary caregivers. That feeling that you're safe, that you're seen. These people have often been neglected emotionally, or they've had parents who were too authoritarian, or who didn't really set any rules at all, and who just neglected them, and who never gave them the experience that it's safe to feel sad. It's safe to feel vulnerable. It's you can trust me to tend to you and to be with you if you're afraid, right? So they have this insecure attachment. Now, narcissism is a kind of a habit or a protective shield against vulnerable emotions. I'll say that again. So narcissism is a protective shield against vulnerable emotions. So the more vulnerable they are, and I'm talking about feelings like shame, inadequacy, fear, sadness, these sorts of vulnerable emotions, the more of that going on, the more they try to compensate and hide behind this belief of being special and unique and different. So one of the things that narcissists kind of present when they come into therapy is emotion phobia. This is one of the typical signs of solid narcissism is emotion phobia. There's this almost phobia of being in touch with and or sharing any vulnerable emotions. Emotions like, or experiences like shame, sadness, fear, these sorts of things. And instead they're compensating with this facade of being superior and completely self-sufficient, not having to depend on anyone, not asking for help. Now, with the kind of covert or vulnerable narcissist types, you get the same thing. They seem very emotional, but what you'll notice with them is that they're not really displaying emotions. What they're doing is that they're displaying emotionality. So there's a distinction to be made between emotion and emotionality. So emotionality is more like a show. It's more like a display. It's more like a performance of sorts. So it's the client who comes in that sullen mood, or just sits there and cries, but won't communicate or won't really engage, right? That's more emotionality. But they're not really showing their or sharing their emotions, their actual inner life. Um, know this though. I mean that drive to feel special, does have its developmental necessities and uses. Children, of course, feel like they are the center of the world. Teenagers are often quite narcissistic. When people experience losses, when women get pregnant, there's often more of a sense of entitlement. I'm entitled to attention. I'm entitled to be taken care of, and also, for teenagers, for example, who are on the quest to kind of discover who they are and their own identity, that's a time where you often see more of this. Also, if you've studied ego development and you're familiar with Jane Levinger and Susan Cook-Reuter's model, stages like the expert stage, where people are just beginning to develop their own inner sense of authority, stepping back from that more socialized mind. Here you can often get a surge of, I want to be validated no longer for being part of the group, but for being special and especially competent, and these sorts of things. Also, there's a couple of psychologists by the name of Benjamin Lee and Natalie Dove who looked at 100 studies with more than 40,000 people. And what they found to be one of the best predictors of romantic relationship success and sustainability over time is that people saw their partner as better than they objectively were. Now, exactly how you measure how good someone objectively is, I don't really know. But more attractive, more intelligent, more funny. They would put their partner up on a pedestal and kind of have a positive illusion about it. And of course, that makes them feel special, because if I'm with this beautiful, funny, attractive, charming person, if that person wants to be with me, then that confirms me as validated, as a special person. So that drive to feel special isn't necessarily all bad. But when it becomes dominant, when it becomes the main thing in someone's life, that's when you begin to see problems, right? So here's the problem with this. So if I'm special, and remember that special is a comparative, kind of competitive way of evaluating and thinking. So in that case, I'm special and you're not. And the more I'm addicted to this, the more that fuels things like entitlement. So I'm entitled to special treatments. but you're not, right? Um, you see hypocrisy. I'm entitled to have certain things, but you're not. Do as I say. Don't do as I do. You get to see more exploitation if this drive to be special is strong enough. People get so egocentric that other people's internal life or perceived needs or wants are completely invisible to them. Other people become just tools on their mission. You're useful for me, or you're in the way. So with entitlement, you very often also get exploitation and manipulation and a lack of empathy. Other people just becomes tools to manipulate, who can kind of satisfy their needs, or are in the way, right? And this, of course, often leads to problems in that person's life. It works. I mean, if you're a politician, if when it comes to like the dating market, short-term hookups, if you work in a profession where presenting or being charming or persuading, especially short-term type relationships that are performance oriented, in these realms of life, this often works, and even works as jet fuel of sorts. But of course, with regards to intimate relationships, people who are highly narcissistic can't really be intimate. They lack the depth. They're highly superficial people, and they become exploitative, and they become entitled, and they become manipulative, and they objectify, and they can't really have any depth because they have this emotion phobia. They're using this narcissism to not be in touch with their vulnerabilities. So when people then come to therapy, it's often as a result of the exploitation and the entitlement in relationships beginning to have nasty consequences. They've been having affairs, they've been cheating, they people in their life feel not at all seen or not at all heard. Things are breaking down, for them, whether in business or in relationships. And there's often this alternating, then this crisis between being special and being king of the hill, and these feelings of deep shame. And this is where people can plunge into a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, even suicidal thoughts. And this is where some of these kind of classic grandiose folks might come in. The vulnerable types are more common to see in therapy, and they often want someone to validate their specialness in terms of no one suffered as much as me. No one's a big as a victim as me. No one's more underappreciated than me. So they're looking for someone to kind of validate that sort of stuff. Um, here's something else too. So when people are strongly narcissistic, it's often, if you know something about the topic, quite difficult to spot, or quite easy to spot. But people who are not necessarily extremely narcissistic, but they're way more narcissistic than average, these can often be extremely difficult to spot initially. It might take some time until you realize that, shit, this person's actually really, really narcissistic, because they can often present as charming, normal, essentially, warm, caring, fun to be around, um, and as as long as they feel safe and secure and validated. Of course, narcissists need a lot of validation from the outside because they've never really developed a psychological, mature sense of self. So it's all about validation from the outside, right? Um so as long as the person feels validated and safe in a sense, they can seem pretty normal. But when they're stressed, when stuff happens in their life, when they have conflicts, that's when you'll see it because their way of coping is by ramping up this need to be special and exceptional and unique. And it may take the form of just noticing that, wait a minute, this person's just a really bad listener, or they're not at all present, or if you try to have a conversation with them, they're in their head running this constant tape loop of conversations they've had with people or interactions with people, and trying to compare themselves and be special and be unique, you know. So whenever there's a crisis in their life or a conflict or something's going on, they just end up in these thought loops where everything is about where everything is about them and them being special. And these folks can often be these are the types of people who can often initially receive a lot of support from people because they're kind of charming and they might present well. But then when the shit hits the fan, in a family, in a relationship, in a corporation even, or a business, people get to see the chance that, oh shit, this person's really, really, really narcissistic. It's all about them. It just took some time to discover it. So when these people then come into therapy or change work, it's often due to a crisis of sorts. And they, I'll give you a fun one in terms of how they might present. So they often present in one or two ways. If they're more the classic type, they either kind of treat you as a stupid, simple servant, who come in and they they might question your competency. They might be short of patience, short of time, distracted. They may show up late, solidly late, and not even apologize. They might think that they should be able to just cancel appointments, an hour before they come because something came up at work. That sort of entitled orientation, which can make working with them kind of difficult because they come off as assholes, because they're so self-absorbed. Like I remember a while ago, outside of my office, there's parking in such a way that you can kind of fit three cars, outside of the two cars that are there regularly. You can kind of fit three cars. And this guy drove up with his fancy car, and he parked in such a way that he essentially took all the space. No one else could park. And I watched him because I was outside, watching. And I observed him, and he seemed completely oblivious to it. And he was also late by like 15 minutes, and he didn't apologize. When he came into the office and he talked about problems in the relationship, and he kind of externalized things, and he immediately took control or tried to take control of the conversation by talking a lot and he said, well, my wife. And I said, yeah, your wife, she doesn't feel seen, she doesn't feel heard. The problem is you're essentially an asshole. And he was like, how, and he had affairs and stuff like that. He said, how did you know? I said, well, look at your parking. Who parks like that? Someone might be stressed and park like that, right? But he wasn't stressed. He's late. He doesn't apologize. He takes up the parking spot. So if you're going to work with people like that, you need to be secure in your own skin. You need to have good boundaries, and you need to hold them accountable, and not be the one who kind of provides the narcissistic supply. So it requires something out of you. Another way they can very easily present is to essentially love bomb you as a therapist. A bit the same way they might do in romantic relationships, right? Where they're very attentive, and they're just the ideal dream partner, and they put you up on a pedestal. But they do it too quickly, based upon too little, which is often why narcissists want to, in the romantic realm, advance relationships so quickly, move in together after a very short period of time, or get married really quickly, or they might have seen you twice, but they have decided that you're the most wonderful person ever, or that you're their soulmate, or whatever. It's just too much, too fast, not based upon a realistic foundation. Now, what's going on here? The reason why they put you on a pedestal is because if they can see you as perfect or the best human being, if you then want to be with them, that validates them as special, right? So as a therapist, then they may come into your office, singing your praises. I think you're a genius. I think you're absolutely amazing. You've been recommended to me. I think you're the most intelligent. You're the most awesome, and they essentially put you up on a pedestal, because if you're this amazing, amazing, amazing therapist, and you accept to work with them, then that validates them as special. So you have to, when you see that, whether it's romantically or in a therapeutic setting, that's kind of a red flag that you're dealing with someone who likely has a lot of narcissistic traits going on. And you have to be able to see it for what it is. And they can very easily turn on you. And what they're also doing is that they're kind of externalizing everything onto you. So it's for you to validate them, and that sort of stuff. What you'll also notice is, as I mentioned earlier, when you begin to work with them, this emotion phobia, it's very hard. Like they just won't reveal their emotions, or show any vulnerabilities, or really admit to any mistakes. They have to be in control. So that's often another red flag, so to speak, is this emotion phobia thing that they have that they have going on. Of course, with the vulnerable narcissist, you might see a lot of emotionality. So you have to learn how to distinguish between an emotion, which often is kind of symmetrical. It doesn't last that long. It's in a particular context. It seems to have a particular trigger and a particular, meaning, versus just emotionality. These sullen moods, these displays of emotion, this performance. So, someone just sitting down and just breaking down, or just crying a lot, but refusing to really engage, for example. That's emotionality. What you'll also very often see is them attempting to control the interaction a lot. So for example, I worked with a guy a few years ago. I don't know how useful I was to him at all. He was a politician. He had some sort of stage fright. And when he came in, he just started talking. He just started talking, a million miles a minute, telling his story. And it was all intellectualizing. Um, and whenever I tried to get him in touch with any sort of emotion around this, he just would not go there. He just could not reflect, could not connect at all. So, what else? What else do we have here? Okay, so if a person then comes in and has these tendencies strongly and wants your help, really helps if they kind of have enough insight to realize that they may have some narcissism going on. What can you do to help them? Well, one thing you can do is to go after the emotion phobia and teach them about narcissism as a compensatory habit and strategy. And what I do with them is I have them begin to identify when they ramp up their narcissistic tendencies. When do they lean into having to feel special or unique or having to dominate the conversation? When do they get cruel and arrogant? I have them notice when they do this and to recognize that these behaviors are a way of avoiding a particular emotion. So I train them in connecting with sensory experience. And whenever they begin to display these tendencies to come back to, begin to search for, track for, sense for whatever vulnerability or vulnerable emotion may lie behind the narcissistic behavior, training them to feel into it, to hold it, to support it, to name it, to train their brain that it's actually okay to feel. It's actually okay to be in touch with. And then to practice beginning to share their vulnerabilities with people as appropriate. The more someone can do that, the more their levels of narcissism will begin to go down. You can sometimes start with one emotion they often are in touch with is anger and rage, because this sense of needing to be validated, needing to be recognized, needing attention, they can get quite angry and rageful if they don't get that. So it's often easier to get them in touch with anger. So anger management skills, teaching them how anger works, getting them to see that anger is essentially a rule violation. And it's all about these rules that other people must respect me and must recognize me. And training them to begin to see those thoughts as thoughts, to turn them into object, meaning instead of viewing the world through these masturbatory demands, to begin to look at them and to have perspective on them. That's really useful. Anything that can help them begin to look at these patterns instead of automatically viewing the world through them and just acting them out can help them in having more choice. Helping them begin to explore how they might feel good and safe without having to feel unique or special compared to other people. To begin to see that this drive to be special is not who or what they are. It's just part of software. It's just a particular operating program to begin to look at it, to question it, to get perspective on it, to, to begin to help them see just how common this quest to feel special is, and how deeply impersonal the drive to feel special and unique is, helping them begin to see the impersonal nature of these thoughts and these feelings can be extremely useful. Of course, the reason for needing to be validated all the time is because they don't have that inner sense of self, of being able to be the source of these feelings internally. So anything that helps them to see that their experience is generated on the inside by whatever the mind constructs moment by moment, not from other people or external events. Because the more they begin to see that, wait a minute, what I'm looking for on the outside in terms of validation and approval, I actually have it as part of my nature. It's there behind all the vulnerabilities and the thinking. That can be extremely useful. Depending upon their level of intelligence and where they are in life, uh, perhaps helping them to be special in ways that take other people into account as well, becoming better team players, um, helping them to question this left hemisphere narrative, this software, and to be able to see it as software. These things can be extremely useful. Also, as well, they do have the capacity to do compassion and to do empathy and stuff like that in most of them. It's just not natural for them. So anything that kind of prompts it, anything that encourages it. So reading fiction, biographies, stories, training them to get absorbed into the perspectives of others. Compassion meditation. These classic meditations where you bring up other people and you get in touch with the intent for them to be happy and to be healthy and to have belly laughs. That sort of stuff can also be really useful. And of course, anything that kind of helps them to disidentify from the I have to be special software and to see it as thoughts, and kind of get them to realize their nature as just being or consciousness. There isn't really a self in being or consciousness either, but you can help them create a sense of self, so to speak, that's based upon being consciousness or being itself, and sharing the being with everyone and everything, right? Instead of being fused with this software of having to be special. But that would require a client who's probably well on his or her way anyways, and who has matured quite a bit. So before you move into that direction, you really need to deal with the emotion phobia stuff, and to help them to get in touch with their own emotion, so that they don't need this habit of having to be special and exceptional as a shield all the time. So there's more to it than this, but I hope that this is a good I hope that this is a good introduction. If you have some of these tendencies and you recognize them in yourself, and you want to see if we could do something to kind of taper them down, essentially, if this resonates with you, know that I see clients from all over the world online. You can get in touch with me through provocativehypnosis.com. I also do mentoring. If you're watching this in 2023, know that I'm starting a seminar May 23rd online called When Clients Don't Change. It's a troubleshooting seminar for therapists and coaches, NLP trainers, hypnotherapists, in terms of how to deal with difficult clients. You can go to the seminar page on provocativehypnosis.com, and you can find a link with more information and the possibility to sign up. But these are the sorts of topics, among others, that I will be covering in this seminar. It's a 7-week seminar where we meet up once a week for 2 hours. I'll be presenting various topics. There will be Q&A in terms of the typical patterns that are there when change work is difficult. Anyways, I hope this is useful. If you have any questions or comments, please post them under the video. And as always, thanks for listening.